Hi guys, now this is a very different video actually, compared to football or F1. This is obviously what I'm started doing the channel for. This is about my story and trying to raise awareness about liver disease. And I'm proud to introduce my mum. And she's going to explain the first and second transplants better than I can because I was only months old at the time. So yeah, shall we get straight into it then?
Go on.
Right. So firstly, what were the first symptoms and what ended up being the diagnosis and following that?
Well, originally when you were born, you had pneumonia. Then the hospital sort of signed you off, and you were constantly feeding, and you had sort of creamy coloured stools and dark urine, and we had midwife after midwife every day saying, "Oh, well, you're being a bit fussy, and it's all right." In fact, they thought I was drinking too much dairy products, milk, yogurt, etc., and said, "Please, lay off them." So I laid off them, and you were still feeding and colic, so I didn't get any sleep or anything else. And I said, "Sure, it's all right." Well, we went back to hospital to got the all clear from the pneumonia. And they said, "Everything's fine, brilliant, so don't worry." So we thought, oh, well, maybe it is just, young baby, feed. So then I was sitting one afternoon, and 2 weeks after we'd got the all clear from the hospital, they said, we think we haven't looked at the blood results because the consultant had been away. And he thought perhaps he was terribly sorry, but your son might have liver disease. Wow. And I didn't know what to say. It was like, oh, you go into total shock. So we went to hospital, and they said the scan machines at the time couldn't really tell. And then they sent us to King's College Hospital. The only thing that had told them there was a problem was the blood results. There's a thing called bilirubin, which is this thing that makes your poo dark, and it helps you. Yeah, it's produced by the liver to digest foods, etc. And this creamy coloured stools is one of the major signs. So off we went to King's College. And there was total
So what are you feeling
surreal.
at this time? You've just gone from having the
All clear.
the all clear and having a new child, your first child, everything maybe just be reacting and it's so fine. You've gone from that to complete despair of, oh my god, my son's seriously ill, what's wrong?
Just went in.
And what happened soon after that diagnosis?
I just went into total sort of numb. I just couldn't. Yeah, and then one of the nurses up at King's mentioned that he might have to have an operation, and then from an operation to that he might have to have a liver transplant. And I didn't know that you could even do a liver transplant at that time, and I was just, and you just go into total shock.
Is that because
the tears don't come or anything? You're just total shock.
Is that because it was like 20 odd years ago?
Well, 24 years, because you're 24 years
old.
old.
So they hardly knew anything. They hardly knew anything at the time.
No, they didn't. And liver transplant was hardly ever heard of 24 years ago. And I was later told that if you had been born about 2 years before, they didn't do them under 5 years of age. So you were pretty lucky to be born where you were.
Oh, lovely.
Right, now.
So obviously you get the diagnosis, you have that first procedure, which was
want me to explain that one?
It was a Kasai operation, which is
basically a Kasai operation after some Japanese a surgeon who got fed up with trying to sort things out and thought he'd try something new. So I was told. It's what was wrong with Stephen was he was born. You have your liver, and then you have bile ducts that run from the liver down to your colon, and then it makes you poo, as I said before, and out it goes. But the bile ducts were damaged before he was born, and in some way. That's why it's called extra, as in outside, biliary, bile ducts, atresia, which means damaged, basically. So the idea was, this Kasai was to make a loop with the colon and attach it to your liver, and everything would drain away and everything would be lovely. But if it doesn't, then what happens is the bile backs up and this starts to attack the liver and destroys the liver, and it all goes.
Is this very scarred? Is this very successful transplant?
It's not. It's only about 64%, but it gives them time to not have to do transplants on babies and to be able to feed them up and make them stronger, so that they're ready for a transplant instead of having lots and lots of babies.
So it's more like prolonging the inevitable.
Not necessarily. Some very few.
In few cases, but in most cases, it's like preventing the eventuality.
The Kasai gives them time delay. It gives them chance.
So obviously, then mine didn't work. So
no.
We eventually had to go down the transplant route, and the initial signs from that first transplant, because.
What happened was we went away, and you have constant hospital appointments at King's College London, and you could see that the jaundice, which had appeared because originally it didn't appear, started to.
That's the thing. So I never had jaundice from.
You didn't? No, not as you had all the other symptoms, but not really. Nobody could really see it. No.
Usually, where people would think if you'd have jaundice.
That's right. And there is a campaign to test all babies for not just what they call conjugated bilirubin, but unconjugated, which is the one they put the baby underneath a sun lamp and it goes away because that's come from the mother. And the other one is where there's a problem with the liver, and it's a simple test, but
I might use that in a presentation.
That'd be a good idea. And I think Children's Liver Disease are trying to promote that. What happened? Oh gosh, basically it didn't work. They knew it hadn't worked, but they came out with special feeds, which at the time was quite expensive, which we didn't have to pay for because they were on the prescription, but they would have been £15 a tin. Very special milks that help to be digested in the muscle tissue, as opposed to through the liver, which really helped, and it built Stephen up to quite a chunky little monkey. Then it was decided.
I was doing like army cadet on the floor like that.
Yeah. This is where then his tummy got quite enlarged, so he would crawl like a commando, sort of like, because he couldn't get his tummy off the floor, so it was
as long as they having like a 3-year-old living about a 14-year-old month.
But before that, you have to go in for assessment in November of the following year. We went in for an assessment. And with your dad, and we stayed there for a week, seeing all the doctors, having tests, and we talked about a thing called living related very early, which is possibly for myself or Stephen's dad to give a piece of liver, and which we hadn't heard of. We didn't think that ever existed either, but they also took us to see ITU, meet all the relevant people, talk to psychologists and all the various doctors, surgeons and everything else, and get to know the whole team around transplant.
It's funny, as an adult now, I still know people in there that knew you as well.
Yeah, there are people who are still there 24 years ago.
And then I'm a medic.
They don't like to admit it because they're getting old.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was that. And then about 3 weeks after we come back from the assessment, 4 weeks, we got a phone call. We were just putting all the decorations up, and Stephen was crawling around in the decorations, and we got the phone call, and we had to go up, and he got his transplant from a 3-year-old.
That was the first one.
That was his first. That was your first one.
Yeah. So then after that, it didn't go to
After that,
quite to plan.
everybody thought it had gone well, and then a few days, a few weeks, or a week or two in, and they realised that the bile duct. We actually came home for a weekend, and then they rang and said, "No, you need to come back." And it was, so it must have been about a month afterwards, and because we stayed in hospital for about a month, and then we got called back, and they said something's not right, and so they tried to do some rejigging, another operation, trying to do rejigging of his bile ducts because they were failing, and this was due to his artery, hepatic artery was failing. So
this would be
the
a common
surgeon.
recurrence, by the way.
This is Stephen is a rarity. This doesn't happen with all. Many are very. These days they've got 95% success rate compared to when Stephen was born. They were losing 1 in 10 children after transplant, which is a lot. So, but his problem is very rare. I believe at the time it was 50 kids in the whole country.
So they took the decision to do a liver-related, and obviously they were doing testing both of you and my dad, well, my late fathers. And why was it that would they usually go for dad, or why was it that they made it was you that had to?
We were told at the time, and this is
because it wasn't like it wasn't it was 100% you were going to do it either way.
We were told at the time, and this is 24 years ago, that generally they preferred to take liver from the father. I think it was to do with babies being with their mother, and it was easier to. Their ethics came out that it would be better coming from the father, and I don't know exactly why. But unfortunately, it was a different time back then.
In the end, they couldn't do nothing.
No, well, no. Your father was B positive, and you're A positive, and I'm A positive. So there was no question of him having it. But still, our DNA had to go to to Guy's to be checked that we were his parents, even though obviously we wouldn't be walking around with him. And we had to have lots of different tests, and I had to have lots of various tests to make sure that liver was big enough and that it was in the right place.
It was healthy,
and that I was healthy and I was fit and I could cope with it, because you're making a healthy person ill, and I was told it would be very painful because of that, and they were relatively new at it. Anyway, what happened was, after this operation that it was decided he had to have another liver, and you have a 3-month leeway with the living related. Because we've started talking about it early, we were quite lucky, and we went ahead on the 1st of March of the following year. I remember that, it was St David's Day.
That was 1996.
Yeah, 1st of March 1996. And he had a piece of my liver. Liver is about the size of a rugby ball, and it comes in 2 bits, a left lobe and a right lobe. And they took my whole left lobe, which is about a third of the liver. I watched a video for somebody else having it done afterwards, and I didn't realise quite how big the lump was, but sort of like did remark it to the surgeon, Nigel Heaton.
That's quite. I mean, obviously you'll know about Nigel Heaton when I talk about in other videos.
Yeah.
But it's your liver. You really can only liver is more the only really organ you can cut and get away with it.
The liver.
Because there's other things that
The liver is the only organ that regrows. They took a third of my liver, and within 6 weeks on the scan, my liver had regrown back into the cavity that it's in, which is pretty amazing. I obviously have a small scar on it, but it's an incredible organ. And if they could get other organs to do the same, transplant would be amazing.
But it's not like it's going to affect you.
No, didn't have any
effect
organ,
on me. But not in the organ itself. No. It's not going to affect you.
I wouldn't ever be able to do it again, because it's not the liver that doesn't regrow, but the bile ducts and the that come off there, and the blood vessels that come off it, they don't regrow, so you can't do it twice. Considering how many he's had, I think that one is enough. And that lasted for 10 years, and he can talk about the rest pretty much. Can't think of anything else to say.
Oh, just obviously during that time you must have some sort of support.
Oh, we had lots of support from
the hospital.
The team.
Had some sort of, obviously the clinical team.
We had
you knew as much as they knew about it.
Yeah, I had a lot of support from the team, especially the clinical nurse specialists, and most of their early days, the literature that they had to explain things in a simple terms, because it was very complicated, was provided by the Children's Liver Foundation, CLDF, which was set up by parents who had children who'd passed away from transplant, and they do an awful lot now, and they've got very, very big.
And the links will be in the description below, by the way.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job, though they don't have shops and all this sort of thing, but because liver disease is relatively rare in children, but they do a fantastic job, and the literature that they supplied helped us all the way through. Just jumping back to that early days with the midwife saying that I was drinking too much dairy products, and that's why his stools were pale colour. I actually spoke to a recent mother in hospital at King's with a newborn baby, and she was being told the same thing today. So we really do need to get that information out there. Liver disease is relatively rare in children, but it's also very, very kids die, and it's not
more. Is it more kids die from liver disease than from leukemia?
Yeah, because they can cure a lot of leukemias, whereas liver disease, your liver goes. There isn't a machine. There's no machine.
There's just too many jobs to do, isn't it?
Well, they're still finding out things it can do, let alone things that can go wrong with it. Yeah, I even met one.
Half of that research has been done by me, fun. I'm just going to put that out there.
Well, my body didn't.
Well, just in case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, I'm sorry for the length of the video, but obviously it's quite a lot to get through. And yeah, well, we both do. The video, the links to the description for the charities will be in the description below. You can find out tons of information about liver disease, and if you want to donate, the web page is down there as well, and you can donate whatever you can. It all goes to research to hopefully find cures and find other ways of solving the problem. There are ways which I'll explain in other videos. But yes, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking part. And I'll speak to you guys soon.
Bye.